I'm here with Brendan of Counterparts to talk about Heaven Let Them Die EP that they just surprised everybody with, plus just this tiny little tour that they're headlining in 2025 across North America. First of all, Brendan, thank you very much for taking the time and joining me for this chat.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We're both Canadians, and I know you're from Hamilton, unless
Yep.
I'm completely wrong here.
No,
A
no, you
place
got it.
that I tend to refer to as the armpit of Ontario.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in Toronto, I tend to refer to Hamilton as the armpit of Ontario. I feel like you guys are one of the few bright spots that that city has given us. Would you agree with that?
Uh, yeah. I mean, like so like that's the thing. Like with Hamilton, like I guess like when I started going to shows like early 2000s, uh, there was more stuff going on for sure. I think and even before that, like way before I was like, I mean, I was still into the music, but it was like, I was way too young to be like go, my parents would never let me like go, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the underground and like see a show. Uh but before us, I think like the scene around here was like, it was a bit better. There was a lot of bands doing like cooler stuff and um but yeah, I mean, and I guess it was like prior to Counterparts, the scene here was really strong, I feel, and there's a lot of bands doing a bunch of cool stuff. And then pretty much right around the time that we started touring, it was like, oh, this is like shot now. Like no, there's no more shows in Hamilton. Like, there went from having a bunch of different venues to like, okay, there's one maybe. And then it was kind of like that forever. And then you would only really the only shows in Hamilton that the only shows that would like happen in Hamilton, I guess, in our world would be if like we were doing a show here, and like luckily now it seems like things have changed and there's a lot more going on. Like I know there's a lot of like hardcore bands that have popped up from Hamilton and I think it's just a bunch of kids here like starting to sort of try and like rebuild what that was, which is really cool. Um
So
yeah, it
basically,
it
what
just
you're
just took
saying
a sec, but you know.
So basically, what you're saying is just like Lexington Steel at a gangbang, you guys ruin it for everybody else.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Well, as soon as we came out and we were like, yeah, oh cool, oh cool, we graduated high school, like we can drive now, like we can do this and play shows. Then it was just like, oh no, like you're like, I mean, thankfully we got our license, like our driver's licenses, because it was like, oh no, yeah, anytime you're playing a show, like you're driving for it now. Um, and I for sure miss it. I miss, like when I was in high school and stuff, I was going to shows, multiple shows every week. There's always something going on, and then it's like, hey, we can be a part of it. Like we're here, like us too, right? And then it's like, oh no, no, there's no shows anymore, and we're just like, fuck, like what are we supposed to do? But uh, but yeah, I mean, for a while, yeah, it seems like there weren't too many bands from Hamilton doing shit. I mean, like you had like us and like the Arkells, and that's kind of it, right? But it's like two totally different
Yeah.
worlds.
They're
So
not even
I'm
in
like,
this.
yeah,
They're not even in the same ballpark.
yeah, right. It's like we're not like, good for them. They put it on for Hamilton, but I'm just like, yeah, that's some, I don't know. That's some that ain't my thing.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely not my cup
but
of tea
good for
either.
them.
Before we talk more about the EP, let me ask you about the title. Does the title mean the meaning behind the title? Is it Heaven Let Them Die or Heaven Let Them Die? Because the two mean two
Could be
different things.
both. That was
Both.
that was why we did it. Uh yeah, it could like it's kind of, it's kind of up to interpretation, really. When I first thought of the title, in my mind, it was like I mean, it comes from the line like I wept when heaven let them die, and it's like heaven is literally letting these things die, like it doesn't care. And then we were throwing around some like title ideas and stuff, and then I was just like, yeah, I kind of like that. Like, not only does it sound hard, it's like it's like heaven let them die, like it just watched and let them die. But then you could also have like, I didn't put a comma there, but it could be like heaven, comma, let them die,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're suffering, like let them die sort of thing. And um I was kind of like, yeah, okay, cool, we can do that. And then maybe, you know, if there's any uh like Christian Counterparts fans left, they might be like, I don't know, for whatever reason, for the longest time, people thought we were like a Christian band. And it's like, for those kids, they can be like, see, like they're talking about sinners, like heaven, let them die. And it's like, sure, whatever, just give me the $20 and it can be whatever you want it to be.
I love how you put that in financial terms, but yeah, it could have the meaning of heaven as something kind. It's doing someone's a favor by letting them die, or just completely
Yep.
not giving a shit. And
Yeah, exactly.
so
And
I love that.
honestly, for a lot of the like, I guess you can look at it with everything that I'm talking about. It's like you can look at it in both ways, right? It's like for me, like if you take like my cat, for example, it's like heaven let him die. Like I did everything I could to save him. Like nothing worked. He still died. Like what kind of God would do that? Like how is that allowed? But then it could also be like, well, he was very sick. He was suffering. Like, I don't want to be the one to have to like put him out of his misery, and it's like heaven. So so it's like
Very
you
philosophical of
you
you.
can you can see at it. Sorry, you can look at it from both ways there. So it was just kind of like, yeah, it was a no brainer for the album title. But to me, when I first thought of it, I was going like fuck heaven, like heaven let them die. Like why what who gives a shit? Like they just fucking stood there and watched, like but.
I normally
But
say I
if you like Counterparts and God, don't think of it that way.
I normally say that I care as much as God does about children with leukemia, which is
Yeah.
apparently not
Yeah,
good
right.
shit at all. But you
Yep.
guys dropped this off as a surprise. Is this? I don't think anybody was expecting. You guys just released it on November 7th. Is
Yep.
this a marketing ploy by you guys? Is this something that you thought would be really cool for the fan base? What was the thought process behind it?
Yeah, like we thought that I mean, pretty much we thought that it would be cool. That's why we did it. I mean, from like a marketing standpoint, it's kind of like the polar opposite of what you should do. And like I've tried to do it in the past with like full length records and other stuff, and it's just been shot down. Like everyone's like, are you crazy? Like we spent all this money on like an album and like it's just gonna drop. Like no, you have to do pre-orders and an album rollout or like and all of this shit. And it's like from a marketing standpoint, it's like probably the dumbest thing you can do. But for this EP, like we didn't care because we were like, yeah, we could do this like pre-order and tease this shit. And it's like we haven't put out anything in a couple years, and we haven't even toured that much this year. So it's like, I guess it would be cool to let people know like, hey, like we do have new music coming out soon, instead of just kind of people being like, I wonder what they're doing. Like they've done two tours and they haven't put out any new music in like a couple years. Like what are they up to? But at the same time, I was like, the reaction that we'll get from not only dropping it out of nowhere, but it being the heaviest release we've done, and doing a one music video for two songs, and it's like this crazy concept, and the most expensive music video we've ever done, probably the most expensive thing we've ever bought as a band, including records. Uh, and it's like I knew that doing it all out of nowhere, like, but like having a plan set in place, keeping it a secret and just dropping it all at once. I was like, I know this is going to turn heads and this is going to create that like hype and urgency that the band's needed for years. Um, and so yeah, we were like, okay, cool, like let's try it, let's see what happens. And thankfully it worked. I know if it didn't, like I would have never heard the fucking end of that from management, label, everything. Like they would never let me take the reins on like on a release like that ever again. But thank God it was it worked, and I get to be like, I was right. Like
I told
I
you
know
so.
I know what I'm doing. I'm not an idiot. So
Just because I'm from Hamilton doesn't mean I'm an idiot. So,
exactly. Cool
uh,
stuff can happen here.
yeah, cool stuff can happen. It's even a broken clock is right twice a day.
There
Uh,
you go.
every album, every release is a snapshot. At least that's my view. Every album, every release is a snapshot of the band at that specific moment and when
Yep.
it was created. So if you look
Yep.
at the snapshot of this EP, musically, lyrically, what do you see in that snapshot?
For me, it's really and I guess like when it comes to music and lyrics, like they weren't necessarily related. It's just kind of like, or I guess like it wasn't planned for the lyrical content to be so heavy or for or like it started with the music. Like we all talked about like we want to do something heavier, like doing a lot of stuff, like a lot of support tours. Like both tours we've done this year have been support tours, and then we did the Euro summer festivals, and it's like you're not headlining, so you're not the main reason why people are there. You can't like you're essentially trying to convince them like, hey, we're good. Like, please like us. You know what I mean? So it's and we were talking about it and we're just like, it's way easier to do that if you're playing to like 20,000 people and you just give them heavy shit instead of like, having to know like there's like these, it's like the weird like instrumental interludes and crazy timing stuff and all of that. And then it's like, oh, the Counterparts fans know the lore of like Brennan's he's like referencing these old lyrics in this and it's like it's so much work, right? So we were just like we want to just do something heavy, like the heavy songs that we have, like the one or two really heavy songs per record. When we do those live, they go over the best, and that they like rope people in. And we were just like, what if we did a whole EP of just heavy, and then lyrically, like every record, pretty much, that will always sort of be a snapshot of at least where I'm at in the current period because I think yeah, pretty much since Hell and Home, it's just been like, like Hell and Home ends here and then Tragedy Will Find Us picks up where that left off, and then You're Not You picks up where that left off, and then Nothing Left to Love and Eulogy and have now Heaven Let Them Die. It's like it's all just kind of chronological basically, and going off of what I'm dealing with in my life, and then the music, uh, but I feel like the music doesn't necessarily influence the lyrics too much, but um, I guess just given what I had to write about, the fact that the music was a lot heavier this time around, it just kind of fit and sort of made sense. And it like made this thing like kind of come together in a natural way.
You've said that basically performing live had a huge impact on what drove this EP.
Yep.
Is there any moment or any album that you can look back that had a similar impact to you as a frontman that perhaps change or a switch turn or allow you to develop and grow into who you are today?
I think I think that see like it's tough because like we're very fortunate to be one of those bands where like every record that we put out is the biggest one and like the most well received. So we're very, very lucky in that regard. Like, so, it's not like I can go back and be like, oh, everybody just wants to hear Hell and Home stuff. It's like, yeah, there's probably like three kids that want to hear that, and everybody else like hasn't made it that far back in the catalog yet. But I think like one of the bigger turning points for sure with the band was um doing stuff like or putting out like You're Not You Anymore. I think that was sort of like, doing that and then noticing the crowd sort of like uh it was like they sort of like took to the songs a lot quicker than past releases. And I think that that's sort of like seeing just like how quickly people can like, grab hold of something and run with it. That sort of influenced us to just be like, okay, like this, yes, this band is always, it's for us first, and it's only what we want to do, and we don't like do like fan service shit really, but it's like but people really like when we're just straightforward and just give them hits. So like let's just do that. Like, and I think it comes with like growing up too, and just, you know, when you're a kid and you're putting out music, it's like everybody wants to like show off and shit, and everyone wants to look how crazy I am. And it's just like, yo, let's just write good songs. Like, do we need the crazy fucking like wild timing math guitar part? It's like for what? Like the three kids in the crowd who have guitars without headstocks that are gonna give a shit. It's like, no, just make the part sick and then everybody in the crowd will like it. You know what I mean? So from then on, we were kind of just like, yeah, like let's just focus on like making the, so it's not just like part, breakdown part. It's like, let's write songs. Like, let's give them songs. Like, let's work, think about the flow of a record and like the track listing and like, does that song make sense to come after this song or should it be here? And sort of treating it as like, I guess I wouldn't say like having like a pop songwriting sensibility, but just like any sort of songwriting sensibility at all. And I think from then on out, it's been cool and it's worked. And we're just still at like, even years later, we're still sort of like working on that and honing that, uh, those abilities within the band. But it's working, so.
As you look, not just to what you said is really important because it kind of sets up my next question. When you look towards the future and you look at the genre of metalcore, is there enough room in that genre for not only your own personal growth as an artist, but the overall growth and development of the band without feeling like you guys are pigeonholed into a certain sound and a certain stereotype?
I think now more so than ever, yeah. I think like uh for the longest time, uh, I guess like from You're Not You onward and stuff, it was like, we kind of felt like it was like, yeah, we're still gonna do whatever we want, but at the end of the day, like we gotta make these counterpart songs, right? Like we can't switch it up too much. And like I don't think I'm ever gonna feel differently about that. Like at this point in our career, it's like what album like 7 or 8 or whatever. Like I think switching up completely, like that's just like a dumb move. Like that's just like suicide at this point, right? It's like if it was album 3, whatever, we could maybe try something, but it's just a matter of like slightly tweaking stuff. And it's like for like this EP, for example, it was like, let's just go all heavy front to back, like no singing, no, it's like barely any like clean instrumental parts. It's like, let's just go like heavy as we can. And seeing it be so like well received, um, that I think that was really cool, because yeah, like if we had put this out and even in my mind, I'm like, it's not different. Like it sounds like Counterparts. Like it just sounds like you put all of the really heavy Counterpart songs from each record on one EP and put it out. Still sounds like us. But if we put it out and everyone was like, no, I don't like this at all. This sucks. Like I don't stop doing just heavy shit, like do the other stuff, I'd be like, oh, all right, we fucked up. Like we got to go back to just doing, all the songs have to be like Bound to the Burn type shit. But uh luckily it just worked. And it's like, okay, cool. So like, yeah, maybe we can try and do some different stuff. Maybe the next EP doesn't have to be all heavy. Maybe we could do like a really sad EP instead. You know what I mean? And just sort of like there's all these things that we can try now because of how well received this one was. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't sound like Counterparts, probably not going to put it out. That wouldn't make sense.
You being the OG in the band, when you look at where you guys are today, did you ever in your wildest dreams, walking the mean streets of Hamilton, think that one day the band would be what it is?
No, no, like definitely not. It's I mean, I knew from a young age that like I wanted to do this, and I guess like in my head I was like, I'm gonna do this the best I can and like really try to make this happen. But realistically, yeah, I don't think I like there might have it was like a daydream type thing, when I was a kid being like, Yeah, that'd be great. But like, there wasn't really any part of me that was like, if I set my mind to it, I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm not exactly the most like optimistic guy. So, you know what I mean? Like, if anything, I was probably just like, all right, I can probably give this like 2 years, and if it hasn't happened, like then I'll go work at Best Buy or some shit. But for some reason, it just stuck, and it is really crazy. And I've talked about it with in like a couple other interviews, like for this EP specifically, where it's like it's wild seeing everything come full circle. Like, going from like me and Jesse watching like the used Maybe Memories DVD and being like, all I want to do is go on tour. And it's like, okay, like now we tour. And it's like going back, like if I can go back in time and be like, you're going to do that. Also, like you're going to do box of sharp objects with the used and like become friends with them. And like, there's going to be this band Misery Signals that you get really into in a couple years. Like you're going to become friends with them and like, and all of this shit. And it's like, I wouldn't have believed it because that seems crazy to me. But for whatever reason, it did happen. And that's like the coolest part about being in the band for sure.
So at what point in time did you pick up the phone and call your parents and told them I told you so?
I think it was like so I never did it, but I think it was like um it was kind of like once we started doing like international stuff. It went from like, me graduating high school and being like, I'm going on tour, like, and they're like, where? I'm like, I don't know. We're buying a van and like doing North America stuff. And it's just like, and then it goes from like, oh, I'm like telling my parents, like, "No, next weekend we're gonna go play a show in Sudbury." And they're like, good God, and they're like all freaked out about it because I'm leaving. And they're just like, and like rightfully so, being like, oh, Sudbury, like, great, cool. Our kids playing in fucking Sudbury. Like, and then and then like going like getting further out and it's like talking to my mom and I'm like in like LA and shit, or I'm in or and like it was like it was probably around the time we did like Europe for the first time and then like Japan where my parents were just like, oh, like you have a tour in Europe, like you're going to tour Europe and like they're paying you to go. And it's like, yeah. And like same with Japan, like they're paying you to go. And it's like, well, kinda. It's like our guarantees pretty much all going to like hotels and a driver and gas and fucking, and flights and all that shit. So like we're losing money, but like yes, technically we are getting paid to go there. And yeah, that was sort of the turning point for them where I think like once like when they had it to where their friends like at work or whatever would be like, "Oh, how's your son's band doing?" And they got to be like, "Oh, he's like actually in Europe on tour." And then people being like, "What? Like that's crazy. Like he's all the way in Europe. Like that's amazing." Or like, "Oh, he's in Japan," or "Oh, he's in Australia." And like that's sort of when I think the shift happened and and then I didn't have to be like, "I told you so." It just I watched their like opinion on it change, Like it wasn't this like embarrassing thing that like, oh great, like I've got the fucking screamer as a son. Within their friend group, it turned into this like, they were like they had the cool kid. Like everyone else's kid was like, oh yeah, he's like a fucking manager at McDonald's, and they get to be like, well, my kid's in Australia, like on
Yeah.
tour, and I'm like, yo, if the fucking McDonald's guy could probably go to the dentist though. That's kind of sick,
Yeah, that's
but
kind of cool too, you know?
yeah, right. I'm like, shit. Like if he, I'm like, if he needs prescription medication, like he don't got to pay for that. That's kind of fucking cool. And being like, I slept in someone's kitchen last night that I didn't know. Like, they don't get that
They
part,
don't need to
but
know that part. They don't need to know that part.
exactly. And I wouldn't tell them that part, but I definitely like noticed the shift happen. And it was like even little things like I'm like setting up shit from like my mom got like a new phone and I'm like, okay, you gotta like log in with your like Apple thing. Like, what's your password? And she's like, oh, hang on, like, gotta fucking find it. And like going through her purse and finds like a note, sticky note with like her Apple password, and it's like counterparts, like whatever. And I'm just like, all right, like you're fucking proud of me, loser. Like you're proud of your kid, and it's cool. for sure.
I honestly thought the story was going to go from Timmins no, sorry, Sudbury. I thought it was
Yep.
going to go from Sudbury to Thunder Bay. I was not expecting it to be from Sudbury to LA, but that's
Yeah, yeah.
even better. That's even better.
I mean, equally shit drives, honestly. I mean, the only difference is like I don't even like LA, but I would go there like you know, if someone had a gun to my head and said like Sudbury show or Thunder Bay show or I'm pulling the trigger, I would say shoot me twice. But yeah.
We don't have a lot of time left, so I want to ask you one last question about this massive tour that you guys are headlining in 2025. And it kicks
Yep.
off in the center of the universe, Toronto, at History.
Yep. Yep.
I'm so
It's
excited, man. I think it's gonna be my first time seeing you guys live, so I'm definitely
really sick.
super hyped. At the very least, the first time seeing you guys on a headlining tour, that's for sure.
Yep.
So I'm
Yep.
super hyped to be at History in February, to be there for your kickoff, for your official kickoff into
Yep.
this massive tour. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm really stoked. I'm like it kind of sucks that Toronto is the first date just because it's like, you know, yeah, I feel like in the past and stuff, it's like we've always done Toronto like either at it's like the last day of tour or like towards the end, and it's like, you know, we've already been on tour for 3, 4 weeks at that point, and it's like, yeah, we're good. Like we don't have to think about it. We're warmed up. Hometown shows are always a mess. It's always like millions of people coming out and like people like that need guest list and people
I
that
was
just
going to
like
ask you
aren't
that.
like
Is like, how big is the guest list for that show, and do you have room for one more?
we got you for sure. I got you. Just yeah, just remind me closer to the date. But yeah, usually like if we're headlining, like I think the biggest guest list we had personally for a Toronto headliner was like just over 100 names, I think. I
Whoa!
think. But yeah, then when we do, you know, when we're on a bigger tour and we're opening or something, or support, whatever, then it's like, okay, cool, like we can maybe get like 10, 20, and that's kind of pushing it. And I just have to tell all like my friends that are trying to come, it's like, yo, like I can get you. I'm not giving you fucking +3. There's no green room space. I'm not giving you all access. Like, and I'm playing the show and walking off stage into my car and going home to see my cat. Like, I'm not gonna be around. Uh, but you know, so I'm not looking forward to all of that as day one. Like day one of tour is already stressful, and then day one being in Toronto is going to be crazy. But I do like the fact that it's like, okay, cool, like 40-minute drive, pretty sick. Like to start the tour, like that kind of rocks. Um,
And it's at
and
History. I
then
mean, it's one of the best venues that Toronto has to
yeah,
offer.
for sure. Yeah, like one of the coolest venues I've done personally. So that'll be really cool. I'm definitely nervous. It's a big room, but I think there's like just under 1,000 pre-sale already. So I'm like, yeah, it'll be cool.
It's going
Like
to be sold out. I'm almost 100% sure you guys going to sell out
I
History.
I hope. I mean, and I guess like the thought process behind it was like, okay, well, last headliner we did Danforth and sold that out, so it's like that's 1,300 capacity. So it's like, okay, we can either just do Danforth again, or we can try and go bigger. And it was like realistically the only like place that's like bigger, I think, was we were talking about Phoenix, but it was like, oh, Phoenix is like 1,400 or like 1,450 or something. It's
It's almost
like
the same as the
it,
Danforth, the two
yeah,
of them.
it's like, is that even worth it? And then so we were like, well, we can try and do history, and everyone's like, that's like 2,300 cap. Like, I don't know if we're getting 1,000 more people. Um, but I guess to me, it doesn't matter if it sells out necessarily. It's more so like, um, as long as it's like a justifiable jump. Like if Danforth is sold out at 1,300 and we get 1,500 at history, I'd be like, okay. Or even, I guess, even like if it's more than 14, if we could have done Phoenix, if it's more than 1,400 people, I'm like, this was worth it. Absolutely made sense to do it for sure. But you never know. If it sells out, yeah, I doubt it, but I'm gonna like, I will be very, very happy if it does. That would
Hey,
be
listen, I'm going to do my
crazy.
very best to promote this show ad
Oh, yeah.
nauseum because I want to see that crowd going nuts. I want to see that
Yep.
place absolutely jam-packed for you guys. because I think it's the best way to send you off on this tour is to have that home show be a sold
Yeah.
out show and be super successful.
Yep. I think that will, if we get that, I'm sure the show will be good regardless. But I mean, if it's that many people and it's like starting a tour like that, it's just gonna set the mood for the rest of the tour, I think, which will be nice. It'll be nice to start a tour and be like, this is gonna be great, as opposed to just like, fuck, like, oh great, another one, let's go. Who cares? You know what I mean? It'll be nice to start it off in like a positive way for sure.
Dude, if you see a fat guy running around with no shirt, that's me. So,
Perfect. Hell
so,
yeah.
I'll wave. I'm looking forward to the show, dude. I think the CP was absolutely phenomenal. I love what you guys
Thank
did
you.
with the music video. Super innovative, bridging those two together. The visuals of the music video were phenomenal, and I love the fact that you guys said that no animals were hurt because otherwise somebody
Yep.
probably would try to cancel you at some point in time.
We had to. So like initially we didn't have that, but I remember this like we're talking like the everything came out on the 7th and it was like 8 p.m. on the 6th and I get a call being like Pure Noise wants to do like a clean edit of the video because they're like looking at the YouTube terms of service and it's like, animal cruelty and like all that stuff and I'm just like, yeah, I think that's like if it's real though. Like I don't think that's like like if there's a scene from a movie like fucking like Old Yeller or some shit, it's like like that'll be on YouTube, you know what I mean? It's like yeah, like if I uploaded like like my dog fighting ring videos like number 6 to YouTube and it was like real animals getting hurt, like yeah, take that shit down. That's one thing. Same with like murder, but it's like I was reading them and I'm like, guys, I think this is all like if it's real. And then we found another thing that said like it was like dramatization and like artistic whatever and it was like, it just like there needs to be context, like it needs to be obvious to people that there's like that nobody was harmed or whatever and it was just like I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's like I don't like it's kind of fucking obvious. Like if you look at the goat that is like dead, it's like you think that's a real fucking goat. Like you can pause it and look like it's not. But but and so I was like really pissed off that there was gonna have to be like a clean version, and then it was just like okay to just make both sides happy. It was like, can we just do the warning at the beginning and just and it's like and then that way even if it does get flagged and taken down we can appeal it and be like it's obviously a music video and there's a fucking warning at the beginning like
Mhm.
and get it back up and then so we landed on that and luckily yeah it hasn't been flagged yet so but it's
I
like
love
you
the
think
fact that you,
you
you
think the
guys
dead
were
cat guy is gonna kill a fucking goat for a music video like come on it's like
and
it's a
you guys are,
metaphor.
I mean, you guys are not even a black metal band. So,
Exactly. Like it's like you think it's like come on now. Like
I think it's pretty obvious that it wasn't real, but I love the fact that you
yep.
guys were 5 minutes away from uploading it to Live Leak.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like I like because we were thinking not like live leak specifically, but we were thinking about like, okay, like I was like, I do not want a clean version of this. I'm like, if we can tone it down, like whatever. I'm like, I do not want two versions of the music video out there. It's like I don't want to edit it, period. Like we gotta just do something. And then luckily it was all fine. But like yeah, it's like it's that the YouTube rules, it's like that has to be for like real shit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if someone like works on a farm and is like, "Oh, I got to get like the steak cows and like shoot them with the bolt through their head." It's like even if it's educational, it's like, "Okay, that's like fucked up. Like don't put that on YouTube." But I'm like, "Yo, like fiction is a thing. It's a, it's like a thing that exists in the world. Like clearly they can't censor all of that stuff, but yeah, luckily we were good. So
I thought the video was
everybody
phenomenal.
got the full version. So
And I think if you remove it, then you start to really edit the creativity behind it, and then you're starting to dilute how the video becomes the visual expression of what the song is, both
for
musically and
sure.
lyrically. And then it's not going
Yep,
to hit home anymore because then you don't have that
exactly.
half percent, that 100% connection between all the points of this triangle. So I'm
Yep,
glad you guys were able to do it this way. Brendan,
for
man, it
sure.
was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I'll
Yeah,
see you in
that
Toronto
was a fun one.
in February, man.
Yep. See you there.
Take care, man. Bye.
Cool. Peace.